So it is 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. Dinner time or just about approaching it. And what is in your pantry? What's in your refrigerator? Maybe on that plate in front of you right now? Among the big stories in Washington tonight.
We're gonna get rid of the dyes, and then one by one, we're gonna get rid of every ingredient and additive in school in food that we can legally get addressed.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s big promise with a big moment today, why the FDA is now taking on and vowing to eliminate food dyes. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. So as the administration pushes forward with its public health agenda, questions tonight as well over trade. Some really big market moves as the Treasury Secretary's private conversations became public. The White House also revealing how many proposals are on paper, with President Trump describing the posture against China like this.
I'm going to play hardball with China. I'm going to play hardball with you, President Xi. No. We're going to be very nice. They're going to be very nice. And we'll see what happens. But ultimately, they have to make a deal because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal in the United States.
A little bit of a change in tone there. The chairman of the Republican National Committee, Michael Whatley, responds here on the Hill. Plus, a NewsNation exclusive, how officials on the northern border are tracking undocumented migrants with criminal records. And Elon Musk making some pretty big news about his future at Doge, why he's winding down some, but not going anywhere either. But first tonight here on the Hill, your food. Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. calling for an all-out ban on synthetic food dyes. Libby Dean tells us what the White House told her regarding the president's support. But first to our Joe Khalil on what the FDA is chewing on now. Joe, this was an announcement that all of a sudden we sort of learned last night was coming today, and it's a pretty big one at that.
Yeah, and the way that I saw this for Secretary Kennedy, keeping in mind, remember, MAHA, the real core tenet of it is the food dyes, the colorings, the additives that he says are doing serious damage to our health. I didn't see it as rolling out any new specific policies. I saw it as really a warning shot from Secretary Kennedy to major food companies, conglomerates, these corporations, where he says all of these additives that are now going into our foods need to be studied. And he says in 4 years, they're either going to be out or there are going to be big labels that warn parents what is actually in these foods that your kids are eating. Take a listen to what he said here. We'll pick it up on the other side.
It's the time to redouble your efforts because we have them on the run now. And we are going to win this battle. And 4 years from now, we're going to have most of these products off the market, or you will know about them when you go in the grocery store.
So, Blake, what I thought was really interesting is he acknowledged here the food industry itself, they have not made any commitments to him or to the administration, but they're at the table right now. And the food industry has also put out statements basically saying what they do not want to see is a patchwork, 50 different states with 50 different set of laws for how they can govern and how they put things into their foods. RFK says that's why they're at the table right now.
Our Joe Khalil, live tonight. Joe, thank you. Now, President Trump and his administration are defending Secretary Kennedy and his plan that is expected to shake up the food and beverage industries. Our Libby Dean asked the White House why the president supports this move. Libby joins us live tonight. Libby, you had a little back and forth there with the press secretary. What'd she tell you?
Well, she applauded this announcement that we heard from RFK Jr. today, but President Trump's motivation here is what I was asking about, and that can actually be tracked all the way back to the campaign trail when President Trump announced this plan to make America healthy again. You're seeing this now. We fast forward to today, and the president is applauding this announcement. The White House press secretary telling me this.
Two questions for you. How do you square a ban on menthol cigarettes being pulled and then announcing this ban on food dyes? And then how does the president feel about this upcoming ban that RFK is going to announce?
Sure. Well, look, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the president nominated him because he trusts him to make this country healthy again. It's not just a slogan. It really is a movement that has broken ground across the country.
Now, despite this development from the Trump administration, the Biden administration is actually who kickstarted this fight against food dyes, banning red dye number 3. And that dye actually has a similar timeline to be out of Americans' foods, with that deadline in 2027 being set by RFK Jr. and the Biden administration. But RFK Jr. today during those remarks saying the president wants dramatic change. So this is just likely the start here from the White House and HHS today. Blake.
Our Libby Dean, live tonight at the White House. Libby, thank you. So the top 3 major food and beverage manufacturers, Nestle, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $800 billion. Secretary Kennedy met with some of those CEOs along with major fast food companies last month, telling them he wants to phase out 8 color additives by the time he leaves his post. A Wall Street Journal analysis found that more than 1 in 10 products contain at least one artificial food dye. More than 40% of items with dyes use 3 or more. So that is expected to mean potential big changes ahead. Now, during his remarks, the secretary took a moment to recognize the food companies that he's been working with.
I want to commend the food companies for working with us to achieve this agreement or this settlement.
With me now, Sarah Gallo, Senior Vice President of Product Policy and Federal Affairs at the Consumer Brands Association, with us tonight here on the Hill. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Blake.
Appreciate it. The association represents companies, sodas, candy, soups, cheeses, cereals, you name it, right? So you've got a pretty...
The brands you love and the products you have in your home.
All right, there we go. So that's why I wanted to talk to you tonight. Foods that would be impacted by the dye ban: Red 40, M&M's Starburst Airheads, Yellow 6, Airheads Gummy Bears, Mountain Dew Doritos, Yellow 5, Blue Number 1, Gatorade Fruit Loop Skittles, right? That's just some of it. Did the administration get this right?
Well, I think what you saw today, Blake, very clearly is that the secretary recognized that the food industry has come to the table because we want to continue to provide consumers with choice in the marketplace. And we also, as industry, are committed to food safety. Food safety is our #1 priority. And we're always going to make sure that those foods on the shelf, that consumers can have confidence when they're purchasing those things for themselves and their family. And we were really encouraged to hear Secretary Kennedy reference the fact that we're coming to the table, we want to continue to provide consumers with choice, and more importantly, we want to make sure that those products are safe.
So there's a difference between being encouraged that he recognized you and whether or not you think he did the right thing. Do you think they did the right thing?
Well, I think what we're seeing today is, first and foremost, him recognizing that a state patchwork is not going to work for consumers. And that is where we were very open with the secretary when we spoke with him. And it's something that we've called for over and over again. This state patchwork of bills that's coming up is really confusing for consumers.
So like West Virginia, California have already done it.
Yep.
Several.
There are several states that have done that, right? And what it does is it provides a lot of confusion for consumers not knowing, why can I purchase things in one state and not in the other? And we asked the secretary very clearly for a federal solution, and that's what we saw today.
That's process and legislation, but I guess what I'm getting at is, do you believe that the country will be healthier because of this?
Well, I think you even heard Dr. McCary say today, there is no silver bullet. You're not going to remove one specific ingredient from the marketplace and all of a sudden that the country becomes healthier. But what we are seeing is that we're going to be able to provide consumers with choice, and that even right now, if consumers want to choose products that don't have those artificial colors in them, they can do that. You know, one of the things that we often talk about is how those artificial colors are some of the most tested and labeled products in the marketplace.
Why is the U.S. third in the world for diabetes? Obesity rates are above 35% in 23 states and rising. None of that makes sense.
Well, I think what you heard again today is that there is not just
because
one...
Because RFK Jr. says we can't continue to live like this.
Sure. And obviously the food and beverage industry plays a really important role in the health of Americans. That's why we continue to have healthier choices in the marketplace. And it's also why I think you heard the Secretary and Dr. McCary say they're encouraged that industry is coming to the table, because it's not just one thing that is contributing to the health of America.
Is it also contributing to the harm? Because that's what he's trying to get at here.
Well, I think what he's trying to get at is the fact that we want to make sure that there is ample choice in the marketplace. And again, that as we look to make choices that can help Americans make healthier dietary patterns are what we're going to continue to provide.
Generally speaking, healthier means higher prices, right? We've seen that for a while, and that's not specific to you. That's just generally speaking. The head of the FDA sort of took that head on earlier today. I want to get your reaction to what Marty McCary said.
The transition from petroleum-based food dyes to natural ingredient food dyes will not increase food prices. We know that from other countries that have already made the transition. It's not an opinion.
It's not an opinion, he says. Are prices going to go higher because of this?
Well, one of the things I think, again, that's important to remember is some of these products are already in the marketplace.
Right.
So as we look to transition, we want to make sure, and we're going to continue to work with the agency to make sure that we can minimize price impacts to consumers. But keep in mind...
So minimize price impacts means it could go up, but you're trying to not make it go up as high.
Well, sure. We're very price sensitive as an industry to what consumers want. We have a variety of products at a variety of price points. And these changes in ingredients, whether they're happening for one company or across the entire industry, we're going to continue to work with the agency to make sure safe alternatives are available and those products remain affordable.
Let me leave you with this. Do you expect any legal challenges from the industry?
At this point in time, we are committed to just working with the agency. I think you heard him say we've come to the table. We want to remain constructively engaged, and that's where we're focused today after the announcement.
Sarah Gallo, I mentioned sodas, candy, soups, cheeses, cereals, you name it. I believe more than 2,000 companies with us tonight here on the Hill, Consumer Brands
Thanks,
Association.
Blake.
Thanks so much for being with us. All right. So Kellogg's was among the first companies to face protests about artificial dyes and preservatives in its products. Back in October, a protest at headquarters in Michigan demanded Kellogg's removed food coloring, some of it, from its breakfast cereal, such as Fruit Loops and Apple Jacks. NewsNation weekend anchor Anna Koyman has been covering this movement since the start. Anna joins us live. She is a health professional also, don't you know? Anna, it's great to talk to you. You listened to a little bit of that and obviously heard from the secretary today. But here's what caught my attention. This isn't just Halloween. Right? Like all the candies and all the sweets that our kids love.
Easter that we just had.
Right, exactly. This is, for example, would involve pickles, salad dressing, cheese, salsa, yogurt, salmon, oranges, right? So this really would have a broad impact.
Without a doubt. So a lot of unsuspecting places. You just named several of them. So what can we do as moms? That's one of the biggest questions. So in that media event that RFK had at the HHS building, he was asked by the pool of reporters at the end, so are you about to roll out a new labeling system? And he said, no, that would take an act of Congress. So what are they doing instead? They are asking private companies or public companies rather to start to build apps and improve on those that are already on the market where you could just go ahead and scan a barcode and see what potential health issues might be coming along with the ingredients that you're finding there. In the meantime, what do you do as a mom? Serve your kids whole foods. Instead of an apple and cherry breakfast cereal bar or apple pie snack cake or whatever, have a whole apple. Have the whole oats. Have oatmeal. There are snacks on the market. These are some that I give to my kids. And you just have to look at the label, and it's cumbersome and it's annoying, but this is where we are right now. This fruit roll-up, all it has is apples, pears, strawberries, and it's colored with black currant instead of these petroleum-based artificial food dyes. And that representative that you just had on for big food corporations, so you'd have to remember they are following the law right now.
Yeah,
and the advocate, the food babe, the food activist that you
Vani
had
Hari,
on also,
she's on the show all the time.
Vani Hari, and she's had the Kellogg's petitions that she marched with all those protesters as well. They are saying that the FDA has been asleep at the wheel. She's been saying that for more than a decade, but not anymore under FDA's Marty McCary and HHS Secretary Kennedy.
Yeah, and real quick, Anna, because what the secretary rolled out today, establish a national standard and timeline for the industry to transition to natural alternatives, citrus red 2 and orange B, get rid of that in the coming months, eliminate other synthetic dyes by the end of year. All of that is the plan, right? But you just heard there from the Consumer Brands Association about how they're willing to work with the secretary. I guess the question then is when do you expect real change? Whether you want it or not, whether you believe in it or not, when do you think the change happens?
I think RFK is saying today, as Joe Khalil mentioned, this is a warning shot, right? And I don't think it's just petroleum-based artificial food dyes. I think you're going to start to see them try to chip away at the other ingredients as well. So I think this is going to be a massive story for 2025. It is very telling that one of our biggest shows on NewsNation is leading with this health story tonight. So thank you for covering it. I think it's really important. And I think it's a real important thing to give these food corporations a voice as well, because, perhaps they'll change their ingredients too, like we've seen in Europe. I think we've got some full screens we can show of the differences in the ingredients for whether it's Fruit Loops or whether it's Doritos or Mountain Dew. It's different elsewhere. So one way to drive down costs, well, if you've already got the recipe, maybe you use it.
Got to run. Anna Koyman, catch you later this week. NewsNation Now on the weekends. Thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. All right, still to come tonight here on the Hill. A NewsNation exclusive on the other side of the break. Our Allie Bradley. You normally find her down along the southern border, right? Well, she's now riding along with officials at the northern border as they track down illegal immigrants with a criminal history. What Allie is learning tonight. Plus, the chairman of the RNC, Michael Whatley, with us live. How are tariffs impacting the political landscape as he sees it? And Elon Musk just revealed his plans. A brutal quarter for Tesla, and Musk asked how much longer he plans to spend with the president. How much longer he plans to spend at Doge. What he is saying tonight. Welcome to Washington. This is the Center of Politics. I'm Blake Berman. You're watching The Hill, and we're back in 4 minutes. $726. That is the total number of migrant encounters at the southern border during the first 2 full months of President Trump's second term. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says it saw a total of 379,000 encounters in February and March of 2024. Now, if you break it down even further, the first 2 months of the Trump term, migrant encounters per day is a 93% drop from this time compared to last year. The White House today touted the progress that's happening, not just at the southern border, but also as they see it at the northern border.
According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, just 54 illegal aliens were apprehended in the Swanton sector of our northern border, which stretches more than 300 miles in March. This is a drastic 95% drop from the more than 1,000 border crossings that were caught in March 2024.
Our Allie Bradley, I call her the best in the business down along the southern border. Look at where she is tonight. Took the plane up north to Whitefish, Montana with, I guess, a different but similar story tonight, Allie.
Yeah, you can take the girl off the border, right, Blake? But here's the reality. We were the only network and the first network to be able to go out with the Spokane sector chief here in Whitefish, Montana, and we were going after some criminal targets. Take a look at what we found.
Living here in town, running a business in town as well, employing illegal aliens as well in town.
The main target in this group had been encountered by Border Patrol at least 4 times and was returned to Mexico.
This was one of our original targets from this morning. We did not locate him early in the morning, but after we had made that arrest there, the agents still went out to conduct operations to try to locate that vehicle and that subject, and they did. And in the car were 4 other folks that happened to be illegally present in the country as well. So all 5 were arrested and are brought here to be processed and will be ultimately turned over to ICRO for removal proceedings.
These agents are working very closely with ICE enforcement and removal operations and HSI in order to target individuals here illegally who have been convicted of crimes. Prior to that group apprehension, we were there when Border Patrol agents arrested another target, a man from Mexico who was in the country illegally and on their radar. The driver was from Venezuela and had temporary protected status, so they were legally obligated to let him go. But when it comes to the criminals who are here illegally, the chief says their targeted enforcement operation arrest numbers are up substantially.
We've made significant improvements in our targeted arrests here. I think we're well over 100% of where we were last year to date, well over that.
A reason? Agents aren't being deployed to the southern border or tied up with virtual processing like they were over the last 4 years. Agents are actually able to do their jobs up here.
It's been a good day so far. The agents have done a really good job. Everyone came back safe, and that's what we expect.
Okay, so Blake, the chief also telling us that last week they actually arrested a CJNG cartel member. That cartel, of course, designated as a terrorist group under the Trump administration. But the chief reminded us that their number one goal and mission is to secure the border. Because they're not down at the southern border, like I mentioned, they're able to do this kind of targeted enforcement within their communities and also keep their communities safe. Blake?
Our Allie Bradley live tonight along the northern border with that NewsNation exclusive. Allie, thank you. Still much more ahead tonight here on the Hill. The president, tariffs and trade wars. Michael Whatley, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, what he sees as bright spots amid some other numbers Republicans are watching. Michael joins us on the other side of the break. Plus, is there a detour ahead for Elon Musk? Why the Tesla CEO is facing a fork-in-the-road moment and what he is saying tonight. Plus, she leads the Department of Homeland Security, but that didn't stop a thief from going after Kristi Noem. what happened and what they got away with when The Hill returns. Green on the screen throughout the day, and a pretty decent portion of it likely due to one person in particular. NewsNation is told that in a private meeting, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talked up the possibility of de-escalation with China. President Trump addressed the tariffs a short while ago in the Oval Office, including a possible deal with China.
We're doing fine with China. We're doing fine with almost every country. Everybody wants to have involvement with the United States. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high.
Michael Whatley, the head of the Republican National Committee, and former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney join me here on the Hill in a moment. But first to our Marcus Espinosa, live outside the New York Stock Exchange. Marcus, markets were down basically like 2.5% yesterday. Up basically 2.5% today. What goes down comes up, I guess.
Yeah, Blake, a bounce-back day for the market here, up 1,000 points. Certainly had some smiling faces on the floor there today. You mentioned it, though. A big reason for that is because a potential icebreaker, I guess you could call it, between China and the United States. We're going to get to that here in detail, but also it's not all rosy here. We heard from the IMF, and they have a bit of a sour outlook on not just the U.S. economic outlook, but a global outlook. But let's go back to the United States and China. You mentioned it there a little bit at the top that there could potentially be a deal here. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent mentioning that a deal is possible. That's the key word there between the United States and China, but that there currently are not any formal negotiations. The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt echoed that sentiment and said Trump is setting the stage for a trade deal with China. Meanwhile, the U.S. the International Monetary Fund, which is meeting for a week in D.C., has lowered expected growth for this year to just under 2%, which is nearly a full percentage point lower than forecasted in January, and tariffs account for nearly half of that dip. The IMF is downgrading its global growth forecast 2.8% and 3% for this year and next year. That's a total downgrade of a little under a full percent versus their January 2025 update. So the question why, the IMF said in its report today that growth is down because of the highly unpredictable tariff environment.
There is also the increased uncertainty, and the increased uncertainty which is related to the fact that no one is able to tell where things will settle eventually. It means businesses are pausing investment or purchases, and that's weighing down on activity that could continue, and that's a negative demand shock. It's going to reduce price pressures.
The IMF says this is upsetting a nearly 80-year-old system that has been in place for global economics. So certainly a lot to pay attention to, but perhaps some good news on the horizon.
Marcus Espinosa, live tonight in New York. Marcus, thank you. Now, another impact of the president's tariffs, investment. And the White House says tariff talk alone has been driving much of it. For example, the Swiss pharmaceutical giant Roche announcing a $50 billion investment into the U.S. amid uncertainty about pending tariffs on pharma products from abroad. The company says the move will create some 12,000 U.S. jobs. Regeneron, another pharmaceutical company, also announcing a new $3 billion 10-year deal with the drug developer Fujifilm to manufacture products in the U.S. All told, the president says companies have pledged several trillions of dollars of investments into the U.S. since he's taken office. But Americans also have major concerns about the overall game plan and what it means for them. According to a new poll from CNBC, only 43% of the presidents approve of the president's handling of the economy. With me now, Michael Whatley, chairman of the Republican National Committee, live with us tonight here on the Hill. Michael, always great to see you. Nice to speak with you, sir.
Yeah, it's good to be on with you.
Scott Bessent, the comments made today in which he said, I would posit that over the near future there will be a de-escalation. He actually said this behind closed doors. He said, we have an embargo now on both sides. And then President Trump was in the Oval today and basically said, you know what? The tariffs are going to be coming down with China. It seemed like a pretty different shift, a pretty different tone from President Trump today there in the Oval. Is de-escalation needed?
Look, the president has made it very clear over the course of his discussions on tariffs that we would like to get to a place where the tariffs are all going to come down, but America is going to be treated fairly. What we have seen since he put out his announcement a couple weeks ago is 75 plus different countries have come to the United States and said we want to renegotiate our tariffs and we want to make sure that America is going to get a fair deal. The president has been very clear. We are going to be treated fairly around the world when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to trade. China needs to be a trading partner with us. They understand that the president is very serious about this. So, yeah, we would like to see de-escalation at some point, but it's going to happen on terms that are going to be good for America.
Okay, de-escalation at some point. What do you do with this, though, Michael? Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's the economy that often wins and loses elections. Obviously, candidates and candidate quality matters, but quote unquote, it's the economy, stupid, right? CNBC poll, president's handling of the economy, he's minus 12. Approval of his tariff policy, he's minus 16. Approval of inflation and the cost of living, he's minus 23. So I hear you and I hear the lines that come out of the White House, but the American public is saying something different, Michael.
The president campaigned on lowering gasoline, grocery, and housing prices, making sure that interest rates are going to come down, making sure that inflation is going to come down. He is taking steps on every one of those right now throughout his administration. We need to see the tax bill get extended by Congress. That will make sure that we're going to continue to have lower taxes going forward. Tariffs are obviously a big part.
How important is that tax bill as you sit there with your perch at the RNC?
I think it's very important. I think the fact is that we need to have a regulatory regime that's going to be good for American businesses. We need to have a tax program that's going to work for American businesses and American families. And tariffs are obviously going to be an important part of that conversation. When you put all of that together, we're going to be in a very strong place, and the economy is going to is going to go up. And then politically, we'll need to take advantage of that.
Let's move to politics here for a second. The state of New York, there hasn't been a Republican governor there since basically the start of the century or the end of the last one. And there's a rising star in your party, Elise Stefanik, the Republican congresswoman. And there's some whispers, some headlines, maybe she would run for governor in that state, in her home state. Do you believe that she is the best candidate, Michael, to potentially be on the Republican side to run for governor there in the state of New York?
Yeah, look, Kathy Hochul right now is absolutely a wounded governor. She is very, very weak. She is very unpopular across the state, and that state is ready for a change. Elise Stefanik is one of several people that are taking a serious look at this race right now. She would be an absolutely fantastic candidate.
Is she the best one?
You know, I think we'll wait and see who's going to get in that race. You know, our job right now is to make sure that we're defining Kathy Hochul by the standards that the New York citizens and voters care about, which is jobs, economy, prices, regulatory relief. She's getting an F on every single one of those. Elise Stefanik is absolutely a fantastic member of Congress. We've got her and a number of others that are going to take a look at it. I think she'd be a fantastic candidate.
Michael Whatley, I'll leave it there. Chairman of the RNC. Always nice to see you, sir, with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thanks, guys.
All right. Joining me now, Mick Mulvaney, someone that knows Michael Whatley fairly well for many, many years now. Donald Trump's former chief of staff, NewsNation contributor. Hello, sir.
Hello, Berman.
Here's what I heard today, Mick. I want to go back to where I started that interview with Michael Whatley. President Trump saying a relationship with Xi is great. That's not new. He says that all the time. But he says he's not playing hardball. The tariffs are going to be lowered. And he says he's not firing Jerome Powell. If that's not speaking to the stock market, Mick, I don't know what is.
You know, Berman, you know, I've talked about this a bunch of times, which is where if you're wondering what happens next, where's the administration going? Watch the bond markets. I think they were a little bit spooked yesterday by some of the reactions in the stock markets, and I think you heard a calmer voice today in the Oval Office. You've also reported on the private conversations that Treasury Secretary Bessent had. Yeah. I think it's probably the right message. Look, I think they're to Mike Whatley's point. I think they're going in the right direction.
I hear you, Mick. I hear you say it's the right message, but it's at least on the China front, it's kind of a 180, right?
It is and it isn't. And keep in mind, and you and I have talked about this many, many times. China is different The tariffs on the EU are there for negotiating leverage. Japan negotiating leverage. Australia negotiating leverage. There's geopolitical aspects to China, and everybody knows it. I think the market is probably a little bit more willing to take some strain in the U.S.-China relationship because they understand some of the bigger issues. We've had Mr. Wonderful on this show a couple times talk about 400% tariffs because it's not about tariffs, it's about IP and international geopolitics. I think the markets can take that. It was that whipsawing you get on EU and Japan and the other places that really drove the markets and is continuing to drive the markets a little bit crazy.
Hey, Mick, I got to run, but I want to ask you real quick. Scott Bessent, is he the second most important person in Washington? Those comments that he made behind closed doors sent the market straight up and to the right. And you've said, listen to Bessent. Is that sort of his status right now?
Well, it shouldn't come as any surprise that you listen to the Treasury Secretary on economic issues. I still think one of the biggest name in Washington, D.C. that nobody knows about is Russ Vought over at the Office of Management and Budget. We can talk about that another time. Yes, you listen to the Treasury Secretary on economic matters. That's probably good practice.
Okay. I asked you for a quick answer. You gave it there. Mick Mulvaney, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Talk to you again tomorrow.
Thanks, Blake.
All right. Still to come tonight here on The Hill. Fires, protests, vandalism. Has it all become too much for Elon Musk? Elon just spoke to investors. And you know the question that came up. What are you going to do next with Doge and the federal government? What Elon is saying tonight, plus this.
America is $36 trillion in debt. We must get our fiscal house in order and restore common sense to our country.
The news out of the administration on potentially your student loans. Millions of Americans. What's happening next when The Hill returns?
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
That's a bunch of bull. It's fact. It's not bull.
America's favorite sparring duo with TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
Oh, make a point, you bully.
Tomorrow at 8, 7 Central, only on NewsNation.
Ability to self-drive to detect forks in the road coming ahead of you. There might be a fork in the road for Tesla CEO Elon Musk, and no combination of radar cameras and ultrasonic sensors going to make the decision for him. About an hour ago, Musk faced Tesla shareholders after the company's quarterly earnings came out, and the news, not so good. Tesla missed Wall Street expectations. The company reported first quarter revenue and auto sales down 20%, total deliveries down 13%, and Musk went on to make this announcement.
Starting probably in next month, May, my time allocation to Doge will drop significantly. I'll have to continue doing it for, I think, probably the remainder of the president's term.
Undoubtedly contributing to the less than stellar report, months of turmoil as Musk would dedicate much of his time to the Trump administration. Doge as well. The newly formed Department of Government Efficiency pulling the CEO and his valuable time from his corporate responsibilities. It also, of course, can be argued that a corporate CEO taking such a political stand, not necessarily great for the brand, at least on one side of the aisle. With me now, full panel, T.W. Origi, former communications aide to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, Carla Sands, the former ambassador to Denmark and Greenland in the first Trump administration, Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaigns, and Chris Cillizza, joining us virtually, but just as important, News Nation contributor. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. So look, the company is the company, the performance, the miss on expectations, whatever. Set that to the side. I think the political headline here, TW, is that Elon Musk is going to be pulling back a little bit from Doge, but he still plans to be working alongside the president, not just in the upcoming days and weeks, but really for the upcoming years, potentially.
Yeah, of course. I think his opinion is incredibly valuable to the president. And look, I don't think anyone was under an illusion that his full-time status at Doge was going to be permanent. He said so. The president said so. The president gave him a strict edict. Get in there, cut, break stuff if necessary, and put your guys in.
Is he good for the brand,
He has done
though?
that. What's that?
Is he good for your brand, for the Republican brand?
They are
popularity rating, only 40% favorable.
Right, but cutting government is favorable. Look, Elon Musk was always going to be a heat shield for criticism against Donald Trump. That's why he was there, to be the face of that. Elon Musk was under no illusion that it would take a hit to his business ventures. It would also take a hit to his popularity. He was willing to do that for the country and for cutting government down to size.
Heat shield?
Well, Elon Musk saw that our nation was on an unsustainable trajectory. Our spending was so out of control, still is so out of control. The American people that voted for President Trump knew that Elon Musk was part of the package. We want more cuts. We love what he's doing. We want the corruption to go away. The corruption that they're finding, Doge is finding all over the government, is inspiring. But now we want
it's also
cuts
lower
through
than
Congress.
It's also lower than anticipated, right? At like $150 billion this year.
I think Congress has to get in there and actually make the cuts, and then it actually goes up. And then he needs to get into the Pentagon. I haven't even heard anything about the Pentagon. They've never passed a recent audit. They have to get in there, and they have to take out that unnecessary spending. I'm waiting on Doge.
You happy, Cannon? Tesla down. Although it's up after hours, I guess, probably.
Look,
on the news that he's
I don't want the company to do poorly. The company should do well, and it'd be great if he went back and get the company back on track. They were at 85% market share of EVs in this country in 2019. They're down in the low 40s now. Lost $1 billion in revenue compared to the year before. It's not good for EVs. It's not good for manufacturing in this country. It's not good for Tesla, obviously, if that's not going well. But look, I want to just disabuse people of this idea that he's cut government spending. He came in and said there's $2 trillion of cuts. And then they said, nope, there's $1 trillion in cuts. And they said, nope, there's $150 billion in cuts. And the wall of receipts actually lists $63 billion of cuts. And it is riddled with errors. It takes no time at all to find that half of them don't make any sense whatsoever. And the CBO and GAO put out daily cumulative spending numbers from the federal government. Spending so far this year is up a couple $100 million over 2024. There have been no cuts. It's been an abject failure.
I'll give you a word in here, and then I'm going to get out.
No, the Biden administration has mentioned itself that there was $500 billion in wasteful spending in the government. And it also comes down to efficiency. He's in the IRS. He's in entitlements to figure out why there is misspent money. That's going to be where the lion's share is, and it will happen. It'll just take time.
But if it was efficiency, you wouldn't cut the IGs. I'm sorry.
Also, Green New Deal spending. President Trump ran on. He's going to rake that money back. We need Congress's help.
Oh, look, on efficiency, if you want the actual efficiency and cuts, go to the IGs, find the waste. Everyone's for eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, but that's not what he's doing.
Saliza, come on in if you can. This idea that he's sort of pulling back from Doge, right? Mm-hmm. By the way, he is a special government employee, which means he can only be there for 130 days in a 365-day cycle. He says, though, he's going to be there for 1 or 2 days a week, I believe he said today, basically to the end of the Trump term.
I will believe that when I see it.
What do you think happens then?
I think that it's kind of like your high school girlfriend, and you say you're going to stay together when you go to college, and you go visit her. This is not my personal experience, or maybe it is. You go visit her a few times in the fall semester, and then you visit her once in the spring, and then in the summer you decide you're going to break up. Like I just think, look, Elon Musk, he's got a space company, an electric vehicle company, a company that digs holes. He's got a lot going on, and I just think, like, ultimately he's a businessman, and businessmen like to figure out ways to make money for their shareholders, and I think that's ultimately what he's going to return to do.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think wins out here? Because Elon made reference to this today, right? That like the country has to be saved, or else no one succeeds, right? Tesla included. So what do you think he views the ultimate responsibility as, to helping the president or being the CEO of this massive company?
I mean, I always go back to this adage someone told me a long time ago: the answer to all your questions is money. I just yeah. Businessmen and businesses and companies are organized around making money, not, to borrow a phrase, making America great again. Now, if both of those things can dovetail and they can work together, I think that's fine. I would guess, look, Elon Musk has probably spent 75, actually maybe even more time in these first couple months on Doge. Is he going to spend 15% of his time on Doge going forward? Maybe, but I think 85+% of his time is going to be spent on other stuff, no matter what he says today.
I got to run, but give me a one-word answer, yes or no. You think we see Elon, let's say in a couple of years, still in the government, working?
You'll see him in the Oval at least once, I'll tell you that.
I think he saved Western civilization buying Twitter, now X, and I think he's fighting to save our country.
You'll see him in the Oval, not in government.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it there. So, Liza, thank you, sir. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Still to come tonight here on the Hill, a learning lesson for student loan borrowers. What the Education Department is going to start doing in the upcoming days. My take is next. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, she's talking to the man who resurrected the dire wolf from the dead after 13,000 years of extinction. This story is wild. And it's on Elizabeth Vargas Reports in 7 minutes. My take on the other side of the break. Trillions of dollars pumped in by the government to save the economy during COVID. PPP for businesses, stimulus checks for all, just to name a couple. Well, now here we are some 5 years later, and another program is now back in the spotlight. The Education Department announcing that in 2 weeks, it will start collecting on student loans that are in default. The history here in part is this. Loan payments were paused at the start of COVID and had to be ramped back up starting last October. Now, the Trump administration says it's time to pay up for the 5 million people, give or take, who are in default. The Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, saying, quote, American taxpayers will no longer be forced to serve as collateral for irresponsible student loan policies. Now, there is a very real debate about the student loan program and how it could potentially be reformed. After all, there's currently $1.6 trillion in outstanding student loans. The reality is, for all the macro worries about tariffs and prices, stock markets, 401ks, there is this now new and very real concern for those 5 million people and another 4 million who could join them in a matter of months. So here's part of the test for both. For those borrowers, it means having to balance their budget or go into default. And for the Trump administration, it's ending a de facto stimulus program at a time when Americans are still worried about the cost of living. The final bell on this COVID-era policy rings May 5th. And that's my take tonight. We thank you for watching The Hill. We'll be back here tomorrow. I'm Blake Berman.